call 911. You need police, fire, or ambulance.
I'm the police.
This is the story that shook the world.
Help me, I'm Amanda Berry. I'm the police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped and I've been missing for 10 years and I'm here, I'm free now.
This is something that we've never seen before, and it really is the sort of thing that nightmares are made of.
How had a school bus driver managed to kidnap and enslave 3 local girls?
The fear, the panic, her body would have been pumping with adrenaline.
A dramatic escape after 11 years in captivity.
We found them. We found them.
The haunting 911 calls you just heard were made in 2013 after a woman made a daring and miraculous escape following nearly a decade of unimaginable torment and captivity. The news sent shockwaves through the quiet Cleveland, Ohio neighborhood and across the world as the horrifying secrets of a house of nightmares came to light. It all began in 2002 when 21-year-old Michelle Knight, full of hope and a mother's determination, left a family member's home on August 23rd. She was on her way to a crucial meeting about regaining custody of her 2-year-old son, Joey, a child she loved more than life itself. But tragically, she lost her way. Disoriented and desperate, Michelle crossed paths with a man she recognized, someone she trusted, the father of a friend. Little did she know, this fleeting moment of trust would lead to the darkest chapter of her life. If Michelle Knight's incredible story has moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Join us for more powerful tales of resilience and hope. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Michelle's early life had already been filled with hardship. Growing up in a difficult home, where poverty and pain were constant companions, she spent years caring for her siblings, but beneath the surface she bore the scars of abuse. At just 14, overwhelmed by the cruelty of her world, Michelle ran away to live on the streets. But even then, she fought for a better life, eventually returning home to finish high school. By 18, she was a mother, though her pregnancy was allegedly the result of an assault. Despite the circumstances, Joey was her light. But in 2002, her world came crashing down. After a tragic incident involving her mother's boyfriend, Joey was taken from her and placed in foster care. She was on her way to fight for him to prove she could be the mother he deserved when Ariel Castro, a seemingly harmless school bus driver and local musician, offered her a ride. Michelle knew him casually through his children, and when he mentioned a puppy for Joey, her heart swelled with joy at the thought of surprising her son. But it was all a lie. Inside Castro's home, Michelle's nightmare began. Once inside, he attacked her, binding her with extension cords and silencing her screams with a sock shoved into her mouth. "You're not going anywhere for a long time," he whispered, stripping away her freedom, her hope. When she begged him to let her go, pleading to see her son, he tore apart the only photo she had of Joey, the last tangible connection she had to him. It shattered her heart as he sneered that she would never see her boy again. From that moment, Michelle was a prisoner, shackled in the darkness of Castro's basement, her every cry for help drowned out by deafening music. He starved her, beat her, and subjected her to horrific assaults day after day. When she found a small glimmer of hope in a puppy Castro allowed her to keep, that too was cruelly snatched away. In a rage, Castro killed the dog in front of her, breaking its neck, another grotesque display of his complete control over her life. Weeks and then years, Castro relished in his absolute power. He controlled every aspect of Michelle's existence: when she could eat, what she could wear, and when she was beaten. He isolated her completely, ensuring that no one would ever stumble upon his dark secret. Michelle's disappearance didn't even raise alarms, as authorities, knowing her troubled past, assumed she had simply run away again. But Michelle's strength never wavered. In the face of unspeakable suffering, she clung to her love for Joey, the memory of her child, the only light in her endless night. The assumption about Michelle's disappearance may have tragically hindered any search efforts to bring her home. Over time, her case slipped into the shadows, eventually fading from memory. Just 15 months after she was reported missing, Her name was quietly removed from the missing persons database. Unbeknownst to her, Michelle's mother never gave up hope. She searched tirelessly, even though some reports claimed her family did little to actively find her. Yet in the quiet moments, her mother still longed to embrace her daughter again, to hold her close and say,
I would give her a big hug and kiss and say, I love you.
Mister?
Yes.
When no clues emerged as to Michelle's fate, her son was eventually adopted by another family, leaving behind a heartbroken legacy. On one occasion, Michelle summoned the courage to attempt an escape from the house of horrors where she was being held by Castro. But her desperate efforts were met with cruel violence, leaving her neck and back severely injured, terrified and broken. She was afraid to try again. We had no way out of that house, she recalled, and every time we tried, we paid for it with pain. 7 months after Michelle's kidnapping, another tragedy unfolded. On April 21st, 2003, 16-year-old Amanda Berry prepared for work at a local fast food restaurant. It was the day before her 17th birthday, and she briefly considered calling in sick. If only she had, her entire life might have taken a different path. As Amanda made her way home, just blocks from her house, everything went terribly wrong. The car sat angled in a driveway, forcing her to walk around it. Inside the vehicle, a man and his daughter sat. Amanda smiled, recognizing the girl from middle school, but as she walked, the car began to follow her. The man pulled alongside and offered her a ride home. Amanda, noticing the girl was no longer in the car, asked where she had gone. The man, now alone, claimed his daughter was waiting at his house and asked if Amanda wanted to see her. Trusting him as her friend's father, Amanda agreed. It was a choice that would haunt her forever. What Amanda didn't know was that Castro's daughters no longer lived with him. They stayed with their mother in another neighborhood, far from the nightmare about to unfold. When they arrived at his house on Seymour Avenue, Castro lured Amanda inside, saying his daughter must be in the bath. As they waited, he showed her around, but this was no home tour. This was a prison from which he would never be allowed to escape. He took her upstairs and showed her a sleeping woman, a woman Amanda would later discover was Michelle Knight, now 22 years old, and Castro's prisoner for 7 months. From that moment, Amanda's nightmare began. Castro forced her into another room, demanding she remove her clothes. He bound her wrists and ankles with tape, then secured a belt around her legs before chaining her to a pole in the basement. To further control her, he placed a helmet over her head and made a sinister promise. If she stayed quiet, he'd take her home. It was another lie, one of many. Castro, driven by his twisted desire for power, had grown restless after 7 months with Michelle. Amanda, unfortunately, became his new target. Much like Michelle, Amanda was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Castro saw his opportunity. That first day in captivity, Amanda was left alone in the dark, with only a TV for company. She cried, screamed, and begged for help, but the world outside remained deaf to her agony. Watching news reports from Castro's basement, Amanda saw her mother and sister desperately pleading for her safe return.
The whereabouts and everything of my daughter, Amanda Berry. Thank you all very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Days passed, and Amanda remained trapped in her new hell. After 4 days, Castro moved her upstairs, chaining her to a radiator in a small bedroom. In a rare act of supposed kindness, he asked if there was anything she wanted to pass the time. Amanda requested something to write with, and he brought her a small diary with a tiny lock and key. In one of her first entries, she wrote, "You never know what you've got until it's gone. I can't wait to go home. I'm 17 now, but I don't have a life. He promised I'd be home before summer. Another 2 months, but it was yet another cruel lie." A week after abducting Amanda, Castro taunted her family with a chilling phone call. Referring to her as Mandy, a name only those closest to her used, he left her loved ones in despair. Realizing that the worst had come to pass, Castro boldly asserted that Amanda had expressed a desire to be with him. This audacious claim almost marked the end of his freedom. He was a mere 2 blocks away from capture when fate intervened. During this crucial time, the FBI had developed groundbreaking technology to track a cell phone's location, though it required the phone to be turned on. Authorities managed to pinpoint the call to a 2-block radius around Castro's home, leading them to stake out the area for weeks, desperately hoping for a glimpse of Amanda. But Castro never activated the phone again, and eventually the authorities were forced to concede defeat. Over the years, countless sightings of Amanda were reported, including devastating claims of her demise. Yet her family clung to hope, fueled by the absence of her body. During her captivity, Amanda poured her heart into her diary, addressing nearly every entry to her beloved mother, Luana Miller. Tragically, Luana passed away at the age of 43 in 2006 from heart failure, a loss exacerbated by the relentless heartache of losing Amanda, whose fate remained a haunting mystery. Though Luana searched tirelessly, she never discovered what had befallen her daughter. The exact moment Amanda learned of her mother's death is unclear, but she may have caught the news during rare moments of access to a TV or VCR, where she saw updates about her own case. In her diary, she continued to write to her mother, tenderly noting, "Mother in heaven." When Amanda was first taken, her fleeting encounter with Michelle lasted mere moments, and months would pass before they crossed paths again. Castro likely isolated the girls to prevent them from uniting against him, fearing the strength they could muster together. If they shared time when he was absent, he would remain oblivious to their conversations, leaving him feeling vulnerable and out of control, a feeling he could not abide. For Castro, control was paramount. Even with 2 women held captive within his home, he yearned for more. A year after abducting Amanda, he began hunting for another victim. He deceitfully promised Amanda that bringing another girl into his lair would mean her eventual release. It was yet another falsehood, a desperate attempt to reclaim the adrenaline rush that had begun to fade. As time passed, the anticipation of another abduction consumed him, igniting a thrilling sense of power with each new target. On April 2nd, 2004, just 5 blocks from where Amanda had been snatched, Castro crossed paths with a familiar face, his daughter, Arlene Castro, who was walking home from school with 14-year-old Gina DeJesus. The girls had plans to hang out, but when Arlene's mother disapproved, Gina started her long walk home alone. She called her mother to share the news, blissfully unaware that she would never arrive. Arlene was the last person to see Gina before she vanished. Castro, knowing Gina's father, pulled up beside her vehicle, and she felt no alarm as he inquired if she had seen Arlene. When Gina confirmed she had, he asked for her assistance in locating her friend. The request seemed harmless, so she agreed and stepped into his car, unaware of the trap that awaited her. Instead of driving her to Arlene, Castro took her to his house under the guise of needing help moving equipment. Yet, as he led her inside, Gina's unease intensified. Castro's demeanor shifted from benign to menacing as he began grooming himself in her presence, trimming his eyebrows and mustache with unsettling casualness. Then, he turned his attention toward her, crossing a line she could never have anticipated. Gina warned him of the consequences, reminding him that he could go to jail for his actions. He coldly responded that she was free to leave, but there was one condition: she must exit through a different door, the basement door. Relieved to escape, Gina didn't question him further. However, once in the basement, Castro pounced, attempting to chain her up. At first, the chains were too loose, allowing Gina a fleeting chance to escape. She fought valiantly, landing several hard kicks before the overwhelming force of Castro subdued her. Desperate, she screamed for help, but he had cranked up the volume of both the basement and living room radios, drowning out her cries. Ultimately, he secured her and left her to the darkness of the basement. That fateful day, Gina's mother, Nancy Ruiz, frantically called the police to report her daughter missing. Yet investigators hesitated to treat Gina's case with the urgency it warranted, erroneously assuming she had simply run away. As the long-awaited search for Gina finally commenced, a chilling twist unfolded. Castro, fully aware of Gina's fate, deceitfully inserted himself into the efforts to locate her. In a cruel irony, he used his friendship with Gina's father to circulate flyers about her disappearance and offered hollow comfort to her mother during a vigil held a year after Gina vanished. Castro's involvement was not merely altruistic, it was a calculated move to gather information about the investigation and protect his own interests, especially since Gina had last been seen with his daughter. Yet, beneath this facade of concern lay a sinister thrill. He was part of the search, concealing a dark secret that only he knew. In the early weeks of Gina's captivity, Castro largely left her alone, but on May 7, 2004, he unleashed horror upon her for the first time. Tragically, this would mark the beginning of a relentless cycle of assault. He shackled Michelle and Gina together in a grim room, forcing them to share a worn mattress in their confinement. Throughout their ordeal, they remained bound to one another, an unsettling reminder of their shared fate. On occasions, Michelle bravely attempted to intervene when Castro turned his brutality on Gina, only to suffer more severe beatings herself. He would torment them both, their cries for help echoing in the same space where they were trapped. In a horrifying pattern, Castro kidnapped all three women within a mere 20-month span, all within a 5-block radius. Their existence inside his home was a living nightmare, filthy, cramped quarters, chains binding their bodies, and the specter of torture and starvation looming over them. Each woman faced the crushing weight of depression, illness, and the torment of bed bugs. During her first winter, Michelle was left vulnerable, exposed without clothes, with only a thin sheet to shield her from the biting cold. For the first 8 months of her captivity, she wasn't permitted a single shower. Amanda was imprisoned in a space no larger than a closet, forced to sleep on a filthy, dilapidated mattress and use a bucket for her most basic needs, which filled her tiny room with an unbearable stench. Whenever Castro feigned kindness, it came with a chilling undercurrent of control and cruelty. Amanda remembered the horrific stipulation that accompanied the rare opportunity to shower. She had to do so in Castro's presence. To muffle their desperate cries, he filled the house with deafening music, drowning out the sound of their suffering. Amanda sought to numb her anguish, yet she kept meticulous records of each assault in her diary, numbering each instance, driven by the hope that one day justice would find him. Michelle endured the torment of multiple pregnancies, 4 or 5 in total, but Castro cruelly forced her to miscarry each time through brutal beatings, leaving her body irreparably damaged and unable to bear children again. He fortified his control over them by barricading the windows and locking every door, ensuring that escape was an impossible dream. Castro wielded psychological manipulation as a weapon, testing their resilience by feigning exits from the house only to sneak back in, leaving them in a perpetual state of fear and uncertainty. His threats hung heavy in the air. If he ever caught them trying to flee, he would take their lives. His manipulative tactics extended to calculated gifts and deprivation, pitting the women against each other. He maintained a twisted household economy, offering cash allowances for food and necessities, which he could easily rescind. Castro carefully orchestrated mind games, creating rifts between Amanda and Michelle, further isolating them. Upon Gina's arrival, he lured her with the promise of a nicer room and the privilege of eating first, fostering resentment among the women. The occasional gift became a cruel instrument of control. Small tokens assumed a weighty significance when everything else was stripped away. One of the most harrowing moments in this tale of cruelty occurred when Castro forced Gina to participate in a twisted game of Russian roulette, taking turns pointing a loaded gun at one another. In that moment, Gina felt the heavy grip of despair. She believed she would remain in that house forever. Yet, in a surge of defiance, she longed for a moment to aim the gun at Castro. She pulled the trigger, only to be met with an empty chamber. Among them, Michelle stood as the most outwardly defiant. She often confronted Castro, refusing to address him by name, opting instead for the dismissive term due to small act of rebellion in a world where resistance was a rare flicker of hope. Castro had a twisted fascination with her. Among all his captives, she stood out, not because she was broken, but because she refused to shatter under his cruelty. Michelle later reflected, "He wanted to break me, but you can't break someone who's already broken. You can only make them stronger." Through it all, the women clung to one thing: hope. Hope was their lifeline, whether it was the unwavering belief that their families were out there searching for them, or in moments of fierce rebellion, imagining how they could poison Castro and end it all. At first, the women were isolated, locked in separate rooms of his house, left to endure their nightmare alone. But then, on May 23, 2004, Castro did something chilling. He brought them together, not out of mercy, but so they could watch a TV show. It was America's Most Wanted and featured both Amanda and Gina's missing persons cases. Seeing their families on screen, pleading for their return, broke them in ways even Castro couldn't. Gina, especially, found it unbearable. After watching that episode, the hatred she felt toward Castro grew like wildfire. But she knew she had to fake kindness, to play the role of a friend, just to survive. For Michelle, the agony was even deeper. Following her abduction, there was barely any media coverage about her disappearance. Castro used this cruelly against her, tormenting her with words like knives, telling her no one was looking for her. Each time Amanda Berry's mother appeared on the news, tearfully begging for her daughter to come home, it was another twist of the knife. Castro exploited that comparison to make Michelle feel utterly abandoned.
Did you ever imagine that she would be found?
Not really. I didn't even think that we would ever see her again. We were still looking for her, watching out to see if we see her on the street, but like I said, we really never publicized it.
Michelle once said, "It hurt because I knew my family didn't care." Castro even taunted her, whispering with twisted pride, "Aren't you glad I took you?" Yet, through the cracks of their captivity, the women found connection. Despite Castro's efforts to keep them apart, locking doors, putting up gates, they found ways to communicate. Whether it was whispered words when he wasn't watching or notes carefully slipped under doors, they forged a fragile bond of survival. When Castro left the house, the rare moments he did, they'd seize the chance to dance, sing, and watch TV shows like The Vampire Diaries, pretending for just a moment that life was still normal. Castro occasionally allowed the women outside, but even then, it was only in disguises, helmets, wigs, anything to conceal their identities and prolong their torment. But the darkest moment came when Amanda turned 20 and realized she was pregnant. For reasons known only to him, Castro allowed her to carry the baby to term. On Christmas Day, 2006, Amanda went into labor, alone except for Michelle, who was forced to help deliver the child in a baby pool Castro had set up. As Amanda fought through the pain, Castro sat in a rocking chair, coldly reading a book on childbirth. The delivery was far from smooth. The baby wasn't breathing at first. In a moment of cruel desperation, Castro threatened Michelle's life if she didn't save the child. But Michelle, driven by something stronger than fear, breathed life into the baby's lungs. Her efforts were a success, and the baby girl, Jocelyn, was born. Jocelyn became a light in their darkness, a precious distraction and a symbol of hope. For Amanda, her daughter's birth changed everything. Castro began calling Amanda his wife after Jocelyn's arrival, and in his twisted mind, they became his family. Jocelyn, though hidden from the outside world like the others, had moments of freedom. Castro would occasionally take her to the park, to church, or even to visit his own family. Jocelyn, unaware of the horrors that surrounded her, even called Castro's mother grandmother. It was a surreal and haunting situation, as Amanda constantly worried about what Castro might do to her child. One of the strangest and most heart-wrenching moments came in August 2009 when the women watched the breaking news of J.C. Dugard's escape after 18 long years in captivity. In that moment, hope flickered inside them once more. Perhaps one day, they too could be free. The three women were deeply captivated by the story unfolding in front of them, hanging on to every update with a sense of urgency. For them, it was surreal, almost too painful to comprehend that someone had managed to escape a nightmare so eerily similar to the one they were still trapped in. Yet when the subject of Philip Garrido, J.C. Dugard's captor, came up, Ariel Castro dismissed him with a chilling remark that guy was crazy. The dark irony seemed lost on Castro, but when one of the women pointed out that J.C.'s ordeal mirrored their own, Castro casually asked, "Are you going to write a book about this?" It was as though he held no fear, no worry that his grotesque secret would ever be revealed. Castro's confidence ran so deep that he even had friends and family over to the house, his monstrous deeds hidden right beneath their noses. On one occasion, his daughter Arlene visited, unaware that the women were just steps away, concealed in the basement. They teetered on the brink of screaming for help but were paralyzed by the terror of what Castro might do if they dared. Another opportunity came in 2010 when the house next door was raided by police. Once again, fear silenced their cries, trapping them further in their invisible prison. Time and time again, hope appeared, then slipped through their fingers. During another visit, Castro locked the women in a van while his family visited. There were so many close calls, moments where freedom felt just within reach. When police investigated Gina's disappearance, they even questioned her best friend, Arlene, Castro's daughter. But instead of looking into Castro himself, they wrongly turned their suspicion on Arlene's stepfather, Fernando Colon. Colon had tried to tell the police that Castro, who knew Gina, was violent and dangerous. Yet this crucial tip was ignored, lost in a system that failed them. Another eerie moment came when Castro's other daughter, Angie, found a chilling voicemail on her phone. The message, left after a pocket dial, was filled with the panicked voice of a young woman screaming, "Get away from me." Disturbed, Angie reported it to the police. But when they traced the call, they said it hadn't come from Castro's house. Gina's mother, however, was convinced there had been a mistake, believing that the voice on the other end was her daughter, lost but still alive. In 2012, a new wave of false hope gripped Amanda Berry's family when convicted murderer Robert Wilford falsely confessed to killing her. Wilford, who even passed a lie detector test, claimed he could lead investigators to Amanda's body. As heart-wrenching as this was, her family held on to the hope that closure was near. But as police dug through the site Wilford had pointed out, there was no sign of Amanda. Ironically, the location wasn't far from where she was still very much alive, trapped inside Castro's home. As the media broadcasted the excavation, Castro's brother, Pedro, casually remarked, "That's a waste of money." And then, everything changed on May 6, 2013. Jocelyn, Castro's daughter who had more freedom in the house, went downstairs and came back up with a life-altering revelation: Daddy's not here. He's nowhere around. For the first time in 10 agonizing years, Amanda noticed that her bedroom door had been left unlocked. Whether it was another of Castro's cruel tests, she didn't know, but she knew in her heart that this was their chance. With her heart pounding, Amanda made her way downstairs. Just as Jocelyn had said, there was no sign of Castro. The front door was alarmed, but it was the storm door that posed the real challenge, padlocked tightly. Determined, Amanda forced the door open just enough to stick her arm through, screaming for help with everything she had left in her. Meanwhile, upstairs, Gina was paralyzed by the thought that Castro had caught Amanda. Out of fear, she begged Michelle to stay with her instead of rushing to help. Across the street, a 75-year-old neighbor, Aurora Marty, heard Amanda's desperate cries. Seeing an arm stretched out from behind the door, Marty didn't hesitate. She rushed over to the house on Seymour Avenue, the house that had swallowed years of life, now on the cusp of surrendering its darkest secret. Behind the door, a voice breaks the silence. "I'm Amanda Berry." Though Marty struggles with her limited English, the name resonates deeply. "You can't be Amanda. Amanda's dead," she responds, disbelief mingling with fear. With her arthritis hindering her movements, Marty fights to help Amanda pry the door open. Conflicting accounts swirl around what happens next, but Amanda's desperate pleas for help ring clear. Then, Charles Ramsey, a neighbor, catches sight of Amanda's arm through the gap.
Hey, check this out. I just came from McDonald's, right? This broad is trying to break out the fucking house next door to me.
With determination, he grips the door, pulling with all his might. When that fails, he kicks it, urging Amanda to do the same on her side. With one final effort, the storm door buckles, allowing Amanda to crawl through.
Sir, you have to calm down and slow down. Is she still in the street?
Yeah, I'm looking at her. She right now. She calling y'all. She on another phone.
He replies, his heart racing. Cradling her 6-year-old daughter, Amanda bolts to a neighbor's house, fear gnawing at her. She dreads the thought of Castro returning to hurt her, even in the presence of friendly faces. The clock ticks to 5:52 p.m. as her call connects.
Hello, please. Help me, I'm Amanda Berry. I've been kidnapped and I've been missing for 10 years and I'm here, I'm free now. Yeah, I'm across the street, I'm using this phone.
Okay, stay there with those neighbors talking. Let's leave when they get there.
Okay.
I have a call taker on the phone with a female who says her name is Amanda Berry and that she had been kidnapped 10 years ago. Still has her on the phone right now. She's saying that the male is Ariel Castro.
The police spring into action, arriving just 2 minutes later at 5:54 p.m. They are met by a woman, her small child clutched tightly to her chest. In that moment, they realize this is no prank. She's the girl from the missing person flyers, Amanda Berry.
This might be for real.
One officer murmurs as Amanda tells them she isn't alone.
There might be others in the house.
With resolve, 2 officers push through the door's crack, forcing it open wider for their colleagues. They check the basement empty. Climbing the stairs, an officer shouts, "Cleveland Police." Unbeknownst to Michelle, who remained hidden in the house, confusion hangs in the air. But finally, courage ignites within her, and she opens the door to find a police officer calling out.
Adam 23 radio.
Go ahead.
We found them. We found them.
The moment Michelle realizes it's the police, she rushes into the officer's arms, exclaiming, "You saved me. You saved me." Her voice trembles as she pleads, "Don't ever let me go." Tears glisten in the officer's eyes as he asks if there's anyone else inside. From another room, Gina DeJesus emerges.
Georgina De Jesus might be in this house also.
The officer relays, his heart racing with the weight of hope. For the first time in years, the 3 women step out of the house into the light. Michelle, now 32, Amanda, 27, and Gina, 23. The police broadcast Castro's vehicle description, locating him just as he pulls into a McDonald's parking lot. At 6:16 p.m., he is arrested on the spot, a male relative beside him. In the whirlwind of chaos, 2 of Castro's brothers are also taken into custody, though suspicion quickly falls only on Ariel. Investigators conclude that neither brother had knowledge of the horrific events unfolding in their midst. The world watches in shock as news of the daring rescue spreads. Yet instead of celebration, Michelle is rushed to the hospital, her body weakened after years of captivity. She complains of chest pains and difficulty breathing. A small woman, she weighs a mere 84 pounds, a haunting reminder of the toll her ordeal has taken. She was so small that the police mistook her for a child. When Michelle arrived at the hospital, she learned she was battling a severe bacterial infection in her stomach, with mere days to live. Had she not escaped from Castro's clutches when she did, her life would have come to a tragic end. Although she eventually regained her health, the scars of her ordeal ran far deeper than physical ailments. Michelle was left with permanent physical damage. The brutal assaults rendered her unable to bear children, and her eyesight forever altered from years spent in oppressive darkness. The repeated blows to her head had also fractured her facial bones, culminating in a harrowing incident where Castro shattered her jaw with a barbell. Yet even these horrifying physical injuries pale in comparison to the mental anguish she endured. During those long, agonizing years of captivity, Michelle sometimes contemplated ending her own life, but her unyielding love for her son kept her spirit alive. After the women were rescued, Castro's house was hastily boarded up, a grim testament to the horrors that unfolded within. As the truth began to surface, neighbors shared chilling tales about the sinister home on Seymour Avenue. Elsie Centron, who lived just 3 houses away, recounted how, years earlier, her daughter had spotted a naked woman crawling in Castro's backyard. Alarmed, she reported it to the police, but her concerns were dismissed. Another neighbor, Israel Lugo, recalled hearing desperate pounding coming from inside Castro's house in 2011. When he alerted the police, they merely knocked on the door and, finding no one inside, departed. The police later admitted they had visited Castro's home twice in the past 15 years, but insisted those encounters had nothing to do with the missing women. In stark contrast, after Castro's arrest, neighbors painted a different picture. He was known to be friendly and respectful, earning the trust of children and parents alike as he took local kids on rides on his motorcycle. What is perhaps the most horrifying aspect of this tragedy is that Castro had been close to being stopped multiple times. Before he imprisoned 3 women for a decade, his history of abuse and numerous run-ins with law enforcement should have raised alarm bells. In 1994, Ernesto Santiago attempted to check on his property and discovered a section of chain-link fence was missing. When he confronted Castro, the man became enraged, brandishing a shovel and threatening violence. In 2004, while working as a bus driver, Castro faced charges of child endangerment and abduction for leaving a 13-year-old boy unattended on a bus. When he returned, he allegedly ordered the child to lie down as he went inside a restaurant. He denied making such threats, claiming, "I just totally forgot he was there. I didn't check the bus." He was suspended for 60 days, but the charges were ultimately dismissed due to lack of evidence. Castro was later fired in 2012 after leaving a bus unattended in a fire lane for hours. A chilling trail of police reports documented Castro's violent assaults against his common-law wife, Figueroa, dating back to 1989. In one incident, she bravely called the police to report his abuse, but was too terrified to press charges, fearing for her life and the safety of their children. Another report described a moment when she simply asked Castro where he was going, prompting him to lash out violently, slamming her against the wall and injuring her shoulder and arm. In a particularly gruesome incident, Castro stomped on Figueroa's head in front of their children. When her son fled the house in terror, she seized the chance to lock Castro out. The police arrived just in time to apprehend him, but the damage had been done. Figueroa was left with a broken nose, broken ribs, 2 dislocated shoulders, and a lost tooth. The repeated head injuries even led to a brain tumor. When Figueroa attempted to testify about the abuse in court, Castro reportedly threatened her at the entrance, silencing her forever. Because of her silence, he was never indicted, an all-too-common outcome for victims of domestic violence, who often become uncooperative due to fear, battered women's syndrome, or the misguided belief that the violence will cease. Law enforcement and prosecutors meticulously gather as much evidence as possible: photographs, witness statements, and any fragments that may solidify their case, ensuring that, if the victim becomes uncooperative, the truth remains unshakable. Convicting a perpetrator without the victim's testimony is undeniably challenging, yet it is often accomplished. It was only after Amanda's courageous escape that Ariel Castro was finally brought to justice. During his trial, Castro absurdly claimed an addiction to adult content, uttering, "I'm not a monster, I'm sick." He attempted to weave a narrative that contradicted the grim evidence, including the chains and ropes that bound the women. In a chilling display of denial, Castro insisted he treated his captives well, asserting that any intimacy was consensual. When confronted about Michelle's harrowing multiple pregnancies, he admitted to their termination, claiming it was a shared decision. Castro's refusal to accept responsibility for his heinous acts, instead shrouding himself in excuses of illness and misguided benevolence, revealed his conscious awareness of the torment he inflicted over a harrowing decade.
We'd like to enter a plea of not guilty. We will waive the reading of the indictment, waive the 24-hour period, and just enter the plea.
Mr. Castro currently faces hundreds of years in prison with the current charges, and it is our hope that we can continue to work toward a resolution to avoid having an unnecessary trial about aggravated murder and the death penalty.
Castro exemplifies the traits of a classic narcissist, displaying characteristics synonymous with narcissistic personality disorder. His grandiose sense of self-importance, obsession with fantasies of boundless success, and insatiable need for admiration paint a disturbing portrait. He was interpersonally exploitative, manipulating others to serve his desires, devoid of empathy, and exhibiting a disturbing arrogance. Castro was not merely self-absorbed, he was sadistic, deriving a twisted pleasure from the anguish he inflicted. In a disquieting moment of self-incrimination, Castro conceded that he could have easily been apprehended had the police reviewed surveillance footage from Wilbur Ride Middle School, near where he abducted Gina. In a grotesque twist of irony, he lamented, "If they'd questioned me, it's possible it would have ended right there. I feel that the FBI let those girls down." His egregious attempt to shift blame onto law enforcement starkly illustrates his narcissism, deflecting guilt while holding others accountable for his misdeeds. Only Michelle attended Castro's sentencing hearing, delivering a poignant message: "I spent 11 years in hell. Now your hell is just beginning." On August 1, 2013, Ariel Castro was sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to an astounding 937 counts of kidnapping and assault, a bargain to evade the death penalty, which extended his sentence to an additional 1,000 years. Yet he would never serve a fraction of that time. Each count stemmed from the individual assaults and kidnappings endured by his victims, each offense standing as a testament to his depravity. Even in prison, Castro found reasons to complain, whining about food and alleging negligence from prison guards. However, less than 2 months into his sentence, on September 3, 2013, Castro was discovered lifeless in his cell, having taken his own life by hanging. Jail records indicated he was under special observation due to suicide risks. After years of wielding absolute control over others, he couldn't bear the loss of power that confinement imposed. Officers found his body just 27 minutes after their last check, his lifeless form kneeling, a bed sheet twisted around his neck and tethered to a window hinge. In a bizarre detail, his shorts were found around his ankles, raising initial suspicions of autoerotic asphyxiation, suggesting an accidental death. Yet, discussions with other inmates revealed that Castro had lost weight while incarcerated, causing his pants to sag, a grim irony amidst the chaos of his demise. In his final moments, Castro left behind a note infused with contradictions, citing scripture with the words, "Those who confess with their heart will be saved." He scribbled "my kids and grandkids" encircled by a heart, alongside doodles of family names, hearts, flowers, and music notes. On one hand, Castro's death robbed the women of the solace that comes with knowing their tormentor was being held accountable for his crimes. Yet, on the other hand, it signified the end of their nightmare. All three women were eager to reclaim their lives after a decade of captivity, but reintegrating into society proved to be a formidable challenge. The scars of complex post-traumatic stress disorder loomed large after years of unrelenting abuse. Michelle, having endured the longest torment at Castro's hands, became the first to bravely speak out about the horrors she faced.
I'm learning that I'm more stronger. I am able to define who I am, not by the situations that are surrounding me. So I learned in life it's better to forgive, but you'll never forget what happened to you. But for your healing process, it's better to.
Although Michelle hoped to gain custody of her beloved son, the reality proved otherwise. However, she finds solace in receiving photos and updates from his adoptive parents. Though the situation is undeniably heart-wrenching, uprooting Joey from the only home he has ever known would have caused him immense disruption. In her journey of healing, Michelle embraced a new identity, changing her name to Lily Rose Lee. She found her voice through literature, publishing 2 powerful books under her birth name, Finding Maine and Life After Darkness, sharing her profound journey through those 11 tumultuous years. On the anniversary of her escape, May 6, 2016, she celebrated a new chapter in her life by marrying. Meanwhile, Amanda has dedicated herself to raising Jocelyn in a nurturing and safe environment. Gina, who was taken as a teen, achieved one of her long-held dreams. She learned to drive and earned her driver's license, returning to school to continue her education. The bond between Amanda and Gina deepened as they collaborated on a book with 2 Pulitzer Prize-winning reporters, publishing Hope in 2015. Though Amanda and Gina's friendship remains strong, their connection with Michelle has faded. Gina shared that while the 3 women once shared a strong bond, the traumatic experiences orchestrated by Castro took a toll on their relationships. He played mind games, trying to pit Amanda and Michelle against each other, which ultimately left lasting scars. Amanda simply expressed that she and Michelle have grown into 2 very different people. Yet, both Amanda and Gina genuinely wished the best for Michelle. When asked about her estrangement from the other women, Michelle reflected fondly on Gina, whom she considered like a sister, but acknowledged that their paths have taken them in different directions. She chose not to comment directly on her relationship with Amanda. Today, all 3 women are dedicated to supporting survivors and advocating for missing persons cases. Michelle founded Lily's Ray of Hope, a beacon for victims seeking housing, clothing, and educational opportunities. In 2017, Amanda began hosting a news segment focusing on Cleveland's missing persons cases, raising awareness and hope. Meanwhile, Gina took on the role of ambassador for the Northeast Ohio Amber Alert and established the Cleveland Family Center for Missing Children and Adults. All 3 women exemplify remarkable courage, resilience, and an incredible will to survive.